So the thing with PR is it's great, but it's unpredictable and it's very difficult to measure. Then we get into actual mobile in-app advertising. This, to me, is probably the most effective, but also complicated parts of mobile marketing. So, as context, I was responsible for user acquisition for Coffee Table. So we were a catalog shopping app. So when you get a catalog in the mail, you know, something from Chibo or whatever else, we basically took those and digitized them and put them in an iPad so you can flip through and shop from your iPad. What that meant for us is we were targeting a really narrow base of people. We were going after people who shop on iPads. And not everyone in the world has an iPad, as hard as that is to believe. So how do I find those people? I want, ideally, sorry guys, women. I want women of a certain age group, women who are interested in certain brands that I have on my app. So what I was able to do is work with mobile ad networks to get highly targeted ads exactly in the same devices, even the same OS versions if I wanted to, in the same countries and the same devices that I wanted. So for example, if your app is only in Turkey, if it's only in the US, you can part it as such. So literally, it's something like a banner ad that you'll see there. And I know we all see them, and we probably usually don't click on them, but it will blow your mind if you know how many people actually do, and that a lot of them turn into really good quality users. So the way that mobile advertising works is it's almost like arbitrage. Basically, there's impressions, how many people see the ad, and then there's clicks, how many people tap on it, and then there's actual installs. So different ad networks price in different ways. Cost per 1,000 impressions, CPM, cost per click, CPC, and cost per impression or cost per acquisition when someone actually downloads the app. As a marketer, I wanted to make sure that everyone was basically CPA. I only wanted to pay for people who downloaded the app. So there's always this push and pull between the ad agency and the marketer to say, basically, what's the right ratio in between how many people see it, how many people tap it, how many people download it, and how do we figure out the price. So it's a lot of negotiation. So if you say, okay, that's great, I want to actually do this, what do I do and where do I go? When I first started doing this, I had literally no idea what I was doing. So basically, I found a couple of smart people who did, gave them a little bit of equity in the company, and forced them to have coffee or lunch with me, like once a month. And they basically taught me everything I knew. And a big part of that is actually who to know. So who are the right ad networks, and specifically, who are the right people at those ad networks? And how do you get in touch with them to start campaigns? So there's things like Facebook, Zynga, where you can directly get in there, and maybe many of you have tried Facebook ads. Very simple, straightforward, but a lot of maintenance because you're doing everything on your own. Then there's this concept of mobile ad networks. M.M, Google's AdMob, Apple's iAd. There's literally thousands of these. There's new ones that come out every week, and the quality changes every week. So I think what makes this so exciting and also incredibly difficult is that you constantly have to keep track of how each of these networks are doing. But basically what these ad networks do is they pool together tons of apps in one place so that your ad can show up in hundreds, if not thousands, of different apps. So for example, I wanted to put an ad in Zynga. They told me the minimum spend was $25,000. I was at a tiny startup sharing a desk with 6 people. We did not have $26,000. But through M.M or through one of these other networks, because they pool so many advertisers together, I was able to get in there and I was able to see how my ads did. Lastly, there's this notion of mobile ad agencies. These are pretty new, and they're actually more popular in Europe than they are in the US. So companies like Somo, which are based in the UK and Germany, basically they pool together even more apps and even more networks all in one place. The pro is that it's great because you have someone running all these really complex algorithms and changing things for you every day, and you basically sit there, look at the data, and yell at them if you don't like what you see. But the bad part is it's expensive, right? So in addition to whatever your spend is, they tack on a management fee, 10%, 20%. So one of the cheapest and most effective ways of mobile advertising is store optimization. So I'm sure you've all heard of SEO. So for example, for websites and Google and how do I get my traffic. The exact same thing is true for Google Play and for the App Store. Basically, there's tons of keywords, both public as well as hidden, that have a huge impact on if and how you show up in people's search terms. So at Coffee Table, when someone typed in someone typed in shopping, or if someone typed in Bloomingdale's or a brand that we had, I wanted to make sure that I was on the first screen that they saw. So there's tools that actually help you measure how visible you are in the App Store. And this is one where it basically costs nothing, but it's just a lot of data and iterative kind of steps to see which words work best, which images work best in your App Store description. So the last part is in-app referral. So if you're using an app, obviously your friends, your family, your acquaintances are also potentially going to be great users. So one of the best ways to get new users is tapping into your existing user base. Apps do this in a lot of different ways. You'll see it very overtly, like invite 5 friends, get $20 off, or very implicitly, where you'll see really easy options to say, invite your Facebook friends, invite your contacts. And basically, that, again, is a super cheap and super effective way of getting potentially really high-quality users. The only issue there is you have to make sure it's still a good user experience. You do not want your users to feel like they're being taken advantage of or that they're always constantly having to open their contacts out. So it's a delicate balance, and I think one that some people get really right and others get wrong. So let's say you try all these things, and I did, and I had almost no budget, so whatever I did every day, my CEO sat me down and said, for every dollar you spend, how many new users are you getting in the app? And I wasn't used to having that kind of pressure and clarity and having someone really look at me with numbers, so this is the first time I went through this. So what I kept doing is doing little budget tests on each one of these channels, one by one, to see how many new users I would get, and then to see if the users I got were actually any good. Were they coming to the app every day? Were they spending money? Or was it, maybe a robot somewhere in the middle of nowhere that actually is never gonna buy anything from our app? So there's these 2 ratios that we looked at. CAC and LTV. CAC is cost per acquisition. So basically, how much did I spend on marketing? So for different channels, it's different things. For PR, it was really hard to tell what that was because you just spent a lot and then kind of hoped something happened. For the mobile ad networks, you get a really clear sense of that because I knew exactly how much I spent and I could track exactly how many users came from each of those channels. So when I was advertising for Coffee Table, my CAC got down to about $1. So I would spend $1 to get a user in the app. The average at that time for, in the US, acquiring an iPad user was $5 to $8. So I was able to beat the industry averages just because I was really relentless on the data and kind of beating up my ad networks a little bit and really making a focus on just trying to make sure that we weren't spending money without being able to measure it. So then there's LTV. LTV, simple, lifetime value. For however long you're in the app, how much do you spend? But that's a loaded thing, right? Because it means how many times do you come in the app? What's the retention rate? How much are you spending each time? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? So getting at that is actually really hard, but we did the best we could to measure it. So whenever I would go asking my CEO for more money, which is like asking your parents for money and is never a fun conversation, one of the first things he would always say is, well, look at our first engineer and look how he did. So our first engineer was this guy, Shane Sweeney. He left us to join this little company called Bourbon. Bourbon came up with an app called Instagram. So Shane, head engineer of Instagram, wound up having an amazing career, as you can imagine. But the most incredible thing is they did not spend anything on marketing. So my CEO would always say, well, Instagram can do it with no budget. And I said, well, we're not Instagram. So that's easier said than done, but it does tell you something. If you have an amazing product, in a lot of ways it does sell itself. Now, Instagram is an exception. It's inherently social. There's a lot of things that are great about it. But at the same time, it does goes to show you that without an excellent product, no matter how much you market, it won't take off. So by my last days at Coffee Table, my lifetime value of my users wasn't high enough. It wasn't covering the cost. And I got my cost really low, but I still couldn't get the value to increase it. So long story short, what happened? So I left Coffee Table, and I moved here, and I joined Positron. And then Coffee Table, actually 2 weeks ago, got acquired by a big media conglomerate in the US. So there is kind of sort of a happy ending to the story, but I think at the end of the day, what we learned is, one, get very smart people around you to teach you everything, because this is the most complex, constantly changing sector I can think of. Two, make sure you have data. A lot of people in the office tease me all the time because, you know, we're not technical, we're not the engineers, we're not the developers, but we have data, and I take it very seriously. So just because something is marketing or something is PR doesn't matter. It has to have a value associated with it. You have to have an ROI, return on investment, on it. And then lastly, I'd say, you know, you have to look at the big picture. Even if you get a great rate at marketing and people are not spending in the app, they're not coming back to the app, then you have a bigger problem. You have a product problem. And I think it took us way too long to get there. So just having people to kind of give you the big picture viewpoint is also very important. So that's it. Teşekkürler. Umarım benim İngilizcem sizi çok fazla rahatsız etmedi ama aksanımdan utandığım için öyle yaptım. Çok teşekkürler hepinize.